Hi everyone, it's Tamara here with another car making tutorial. This month I've been asked to be a guest designer for the stamp company Freakin Cute Stamps. My first card, I'm going to be using this gorgeous little sloth called Brouillon. I'm going to be doing some Copic colouring of the entire scene, just starting off with a couple of images on some Copic XPress at cardstock. The set comes with the sloth itself on the skateboard, plus these little bushes that you can use to create your scenes. And it also comes with a sentiment, though I won't be actually using that sentiment on this card today. I'll be using a separate sentiment. So now we'll get down to colouring. I always like to actually get my backgrounds in first. So I'm currently sketching in where my cloud and skies are going to be. So all my colors will be noted up in the top left hand corner as I go through with the lids, but they will also be listed in the description box below. So I went in initially with my lightest color just to set out where I want everything, just to make sure I keep some white space there to create my cards. My clouds. Now I'm going in with the next darkest color, my B01, to blend out that B52. And I'm just slowly working into that white space that will form my clouds. So now that I've got that in, I'm going to go back in with the B00 and just blend that B01 out. Slowly working across, just working little flicking motions. As you can see, my hand is quite far back on the pen so that I just get a really nice soft edge as I'm flicking out into that white card space. And just I work away from the image itself so that I don't get any unwanted blue in there. And now just to create a little bit of shadowing to my clouds. I'm not sure if you've looked at clouds, but they do have some kind of like little grey areas that define them. So that's why I went in with my C marker, just to give that a little bit of dimension to my clouds. And I'm just blending that out to really soften this look, to make it a really soft cloudy sky with my zero colorless blender marker. So now I've got my sky and I'm going to work out where I want my tree. I've just got little bouillon, just wanting to pop a little money or whatever you call it. Sorry, I don't really skateboard, so I'm not sure what it's called. But he obviously he's not going to go to a skate park. This is a sloth, so he's going to be doing that around the forest and popping them off some trees that are around there. So I went in with my lightest color first just to work out the basic shape of my tree. And now I'm going to go in with my darker color. So I'm going to kind of set that shadow to the right hand side. So my sun's going to be coming down from the top left hand side of this panel. And now I'm just slowly blending out my colors from darkest to lightest, and just kind of keeping it a rough look. Tree branches and tree trunks are quite rough looking, so it doesn't need to be a perfect blend out. So now I'm going in with that lightest color again, just to blend out that. And then I'm just kind of still working out the rough shape that I want. I want to make sure that wheel on his skateboard is actually going to be touching up against that tree. So I'm just going now back in with that darker color, the E59, to continue working on those shadows and the texture to my tree. Blend that out with the E27, just making sure I define that around the base as well, kind of coming up where that kind of comes up in an arch there. Blend that out with my E23, just going kind of with the flow of the tree to make it look really nice and flowing. And then we'll come back in with that lightest marker, the E31, to do a final color through. As you can see, I just moved that out a little bit to make sure that was touching that wheel of the skateboard. And I just want to make sure that that base of that tree is defined. And now I'm going to set out kind of where the path that he is traveling on to skateboard along. So I want to kind of keep that edge rough, so you can see how I kind of flicked up a little bit because that's where I'll be joining it in with the grass that's going to be obviously growing around where this dirt is. So I'm making sure I get around that tree as well with the darkest colour, the E44. We'll now blend that out with our E43. Just working in little flicking motions to blend that across and just basing our scene. And just making sure we put that all the way across. And obviously that sloth and his skateboard will be throwing a bit of shadow as well. So I'll put a bit of shadowing under there. And the tree will be throwing some shadow. And I'm slowly just blending this out to make sure we get a nice smooth blend. And we'll just repeat that because I did lose some of that darker colours in that blend out. So I'm going back to add our darkest marker, the E44, to set our shadows. We'll blend that out again with that E43 going all the way along the bottom to ground our scene. Just working out where that shadow under the sloth is. And blend that out with the E41. And then we'll go in again with our E30 to do a final coat on our ground. Now I'm going to be getting our grass in. So I'm going in with our lightest colour first, the YGO3. And I do want that kind of blending into that ground because obviously he's in kind of the forest. So he wants to kind of have a bit of dirt around, but also the grass will be growing into that as well. So I'm just using little flicking motions to pop in my shadows. Obviously that bush will be throwing some shadows, as will Brouillon. I'm just working the G24 next, just slowly working into that space, going a little bit into that ground. Again, just working in little flicking motions so we get a nice smooth blend, and going in with that final colour again to do our blend out with the YGO3. Now I wanted to put a little bit of that kind of green grass down the bottom, so I'm just working initially that E30 in there and just working back between that and the YGO3 to get that nice kind of smooth transition from the grass to our path. Working that E30 again. Now I thought I'd just go over again with our shadow colours just to reinforce this. So I've gone back in with the G94, just putting those shadows back in. And then blend that out with the YG63. We see where he's going to be throwing some shadow. And then we'll go in with our G24 again, slowly working into that highlight space in the middle. I thought I'd just put a little bit of grass kind of growing around that tree to blend that whole scene in together and make it a nice smooth transition. And just doing that with the YGO3 to finalize our grass. And I just wanted to, because I did kind of lose a little bit that when I put my grass in, I'm just reinforcing that ground again with the E44 and E43. And then blend that again with the E41. So you just want to work it until you just get that perfect smooth blend that you're wanting. Now I always like to do the flowers first, so I'm going in and doing them with my pink markers. So I've just put a darker colour in the center and just blended that out with the two lighter colours to fill in that space. And then we're going to just do some dotting, just working out where our shadows will be with our lightest colour, G21. So obviously where they kind of cross over, there'll be shadows thrown with that. And obviously at the very base, there'll be a lot more shadow. So I'm going in with my G24 to put that shadowing in. Just kind of slowly working up to the colours. Now the next one, the G46. I was initially going to have that as my darkest color, but I do come in with a darker color shortly because I just thought it just needed that little bit more definition. And just slowly putting those dots in, building up where that shadow space will be. Obviously the flowers will also throw some little shadows as well, so you'll see me putting a few dots under where they'll be throwing some shadows. I'm just slowly working up into that white space, putting a few dots here and there, and then doing some more dots with the lightest color, filling in most of the space, reinforcing those shadow areas by going over them to make that quite dark with that G21. So I'll go over this again and just making sure we're putting our green marker, our darkest, down the bottom and just where the shadows are. Just doing little dotting, stippling motions with your pen. Going with the G24 to fill that in a little bit more. And just slowly going up into that lighter space, slowly putting a few in to make sure you get a bit of definition up the top, and then finally filling that in with the G21. And then as I said, I do come in with a darker color because I just didn't think that G46 was dark enough, so I'm bringing in BG96 to put some extra darker colors in those shadow areas. So obviously all around the base and the sides and where they actually overlap, and that just gives it a little bit more definition. Now we'll start colouring up our little sloths, and I'm just going to be working, other than where his kind of chest is and where his belly is, everything else I'm going to be doing in little flicking motions, working into that centre of the card. So obviously it's really easy with this image because there's a lot of like artist drawn lines where that fur kind of flicks out, so you can really follow along with those lines quite easily. So I'm just flicking up in little like motions and just raising the pen as I finish. As I said, where his chest is and where his belly is, we'll just do a smooth blend in those spots. But where his arms are, you can see those little artist drawn lines where that fur is. So I'm putting my darkest color in where he'll be in shadow, because as I said, I've got my sun kind of, or the light source coming from the top left hand corner, so the right hand side of him will be quite in shadow. So I didn't put the darkest color on this left side because obviously that will be in that light, but I am putting the next darkest color, the E44. Just filling in that chest area and flicking in. This right arm will be in shadow. Blend that out with our E43, just slowly working into our white cardstock. Just continuing, just working in those little flicking motions. That chest will be quite shadowed. Flicking that across and up. And just meeting those two little areas on either side to the highlights place. And our E42 just going around that little nose, flicking up into that hair. See that right side will be most shadowed. And then we'll go in. I forgot to do his little belly, so we'll go back in with the E43, the E42 to fill that in. Just flicking in those little areas. And our final colour will be our E40 to fill in the rest of his fur. Just flicking up either side to make sure we keep that hair in there. Now I also forgot his little leg at the back, so I've popped that shadow in. Now I'm going to reinforce everything because we did lose a little bit of that a dark colours, so I'm going back in with the E47. So as I said, only putting that on the right hand side or wherever he's really in shadow. Then we'll flick that out with the E44, slowly extending that, and then we will put a little bit on this side that will be the lightest. See his little nose will throw a little bit of shadow, flicking out into that arm. Make sure we don't forget his belly this time, and then just flicking up and making sure that we put that little arm in. Then we'll go to our E43, fill in that belly and his chest, and obviously that leg that I missed initially. And then we're flicking up and into that middle section of his face, flicking up from his nose. And obviously this arm will be quite shadowed, so that's going to be quite dark. This will be getting a little bit more light, so we don't want to make it as dark, but we still want to make sure we're showing that texture of that gorgeous fur. So we'll go in with our second lightest color, our E42, to slowly work that out, flicking inwards and up. See where his nose will throw a little shadow. Fill in that belly and his chest because he's definitely quite shadowed in those spots. And then we'll come in with our lightest color to do a final blend out. Sorry, second lightest color, E41. To making sure everything is a nice smooth blend, but still showing that beautiful flicking fur texture. And then we'll come in with the E40 to finish that blend out. Just flicking until we fill in all that space, but he's got a nice highlight there. I'm just filling in his little feet. That will be quite light, and his nose is the same color. I did a little check online to see what colors they have, and pretty much their whole body is the same color. He does, most sloths obviously have very dark around their eyes, but because he had such gorgeous eyes, and I didn't want to cover them up, I didn't worry about putting any like dark, grays or things like that with this image. I thought he looked quite cute, fully brown like this. And I'm just popping his little toenails in, so you want to make sure that you color everything up, even though they're quite light. We still want to add some color there. Now also I do the same with the eyes, so I'm just putting a little bit of C in and B00 just to get a little kind of glossy, glassy, wet look to his eyes. And now we're going to finish off with that skateboard. So again, I just referenced online and chose the skateboard. It's kind of got like a timber bottom and then like a black, rough top. So I'm going to do my timber base, and all the edges for timber as well. So I'm just going to use the same colors for the base and the sides. Just working to where that highlight will be, where it's going to be popped up and showing more towards the sun. And then we'll get our wheels done. I like to use T markers for anything kind of metallic. So I'm setting in my lightest marker, my T1, to work out where my shadows will be. Just lay down a little bit of color. See along that base and where those wheels are throwing some shadow. So that was the T5, blend that out with our T3, just working into our shiniest place, which will be back with that T1. And then we'll get some on the ties, so they're a bit rubbery, so I kind of went warm colors for this, so warm grays. So again, just going in with my lightest color, the W4, to work out where my shadows will be, so along the bases and anything thrown from that board. Work that out with the W8 as our shadow, blend that out with our W6. Just flicking up. And then we'll go back to our W4 to finish colouring those wheels up and make sure we've got a nice smooth blend. I did miss that little bit in there, so just go over and just reinforce those little shadows again with that T marker. At the base of the board, I'm just going to use my neutral markers, so N8, because it's such a small space. I'm not going to worry about working out my shadows. I'm just going to go in with the darkest color, the N8, then blend that out with the N6, and then the final lightest color, the N4. Now I thought the Let the Good Times Roll stamp set from My Favorite Things was perfect for this card. So I'm grabbed out my Misty and I'm just going to pop my panel straight in there, and I'm just going to stamp the sentiment directly onto the panel. So I'm just lining that up on the actual panel, making sure that's nice and straight when I look in my Misty door. As I've not used it before, I've just given it a rub, and then just using my Versafine Onyx black ink, I'm going to stamp that out and make sure I've got a good impression. I'm going to give it a second stamping, and then why not 3 to make it for 3 for good luck. Now I've cut and scored a top folding note card, and now I'm going to get a little bit of glue onto the back of our panel, and we'll get that attached to our card base, just leaving a small border around each side, and give that a good press down. And this is the finished card for this tutorial. This little sloth is so gorgeous, and you could create him doing anything with that skateboard, whether you create a skate park or do what I did and create kind of like a little outdoor scene that he can do some little skateboarding along. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.